or whatever, if someone screwed up, like pop, pull them out, pull them out, take them off.
Dude, I grew up in College Station and had no exposure to oil growing up whatsoever.
Really?
None.
See, I grew up in it. My granddad, so my great granddad was the first person in business that actually apparently moved cable tool rigs in East Texas with mules back in like the 20s.
Damn.
And then my dad got into it back in the 80s. And his boss apparently is a guy.
Oh, shit, I guess. Hey, Mac, are we recording? Oh, shit, I didn't even. Okay, yeah. I didn't know if we were good or not. No, this is funny though.
But yeah, there was like his name's Mac Young, giant man, and I guess him and his boss, I guess, were part of the inspiration for the show Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I grew up on the cement tool side, man, and like my dad started geology, never finished at A&M, and so he kind of got me into it or whatever. But I mean, that's like those stories and stuff, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Like especially those cement guys are.
Dude, my first,
a whole nother world.
The first time I ever remember thinking like, oh, oil and gas industry was, I was in college at Blinn. I didn't make the grades to get it. I did not take school that seriously. Now I've dropped out of school like 3 times. And a buddy of mine, I mean, it probably, 18, 19 years old when it became a mud logger.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
He came back and next thing you know, he's got a new truck and he's got a new car and he's got toys and we're 18 years old. I'm like, where the fuck is this guy getting money from?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I've been doing this mud logging shit. And I was like,
drugs.
I don't care what mud logging is, but I want to go do that. I want to go get in that industry and make some real money. Because I mean, we were all making we were all servers and bartenders and not making
Where'd
anything.
you bartend in College Station?
I didn't bartend.
Oh,
actually,
okay.
I worked at a computer company, but everybody else that I worked with.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So, Reynolds and Reynolds? Used to be Universal Computer Systems. It's like outside of A&M, it's the biggest employer in all of College Station.
Okay. But I didn't pay attention to shit when I was in College Station, to be honest.
What years were you there?
I started in 07 and I got out in December of 10. I got out a semester early, actually.
Oh, shit. Yeah. So I graduated high school in 07 and then I left for the Marine Corps in 2009. So we were there.
Oh, yeah. So we were there at the same time. Yeah. That was back in my quiet days. I didn't really do a whole lot. I was working. I was pretty much just doing school, and then I was working with the athletic department, actually, which was freaking, I'm not really a sports guy, but it was awesome. I was actually, my last 2 seasons, so the 09 season and the 10 season, I actually was the guy who locked up Kyle Field, the west side of, the east. I locked up the east side of Kyle Field, and then the west side was one of the concession stand guys.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty cool. Like we got to, I had a lot of fun there. I didn't really do a whole lot until my last year, and I finally really enjoyed myself. So
what's crazy? Lived there, not my entire. I mean, we moved there when I was like 5.
Never went to a game.
Never once went to a game,
dude. Like that's the thing. Like I'm not even a sports guy, man. I freaking loved it. Like, but my freshman years when we still had Jaworski Lane.
Yeah,
dude, freaking J Train. I mean,
he lived in my apartment complex.
Oh, really?
Rolling
he wasn't
Ranch.
That big of a guy either.
Yeah.
I mean, like tall wise, we were like that. But I know, we were like dude. But most of what we did was just change out light bulbs, And honestly, and like I ended up being kind of one of the bosses of the student workers because a lot of the student athletes didn't have a whole lot of drive. I mean, we had a couple that did a pretty good job. We always had at least one basketball player. Because he could go change light bulbs and we didn't have to give him a ladder. We always had at least one.
Got to keep one of those guys on staff.
Yeah, dude. And like he would and they would sit there and like, especially a lot of times they'd sit there and play on a phone and like one of our electrical guys was this real short guy. And his name was Ed. He's kind of lazy. He was one of the best guys cooking briskets I ever met in my life. But he would get up on that ladder and say, "Hey man, I need a wrench." And they sit there and just play on their phone and just hold up the bag. It was pretty funny.
So I'm curious. So you were there for a few years. I grew up there. I've come up with a thesis. Okay. I've traveled a lot. I've been to a lot of places, and maybe it's just the fact that it's a college town. That could be true, but I feel like I've never seen such a high concentration of beautiful women anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, honestly, man, I had the same girlfriend.
I take it for granted.
So yeah. Oh, I definitely did. That's it. Yeah. No, I 100% did. Yeah. Well, then I went from A.
And if my wife's listening to your smoke show, It's nothing against you. I'm just saying. I took it for granted then.
Oh no, I definitely did. Well, then I went from there to freaking mines, and when I got into mines, it was they had my first year there was what 2011, and that was the new record for the most women at the school, and I think it was a whopping 26%, right? And it's all engineering and stuff like that. So yeah, so I went from A&M just kind of like, just kind of whatever, doing my thing, nothing crazy, and then got out to mines and just like, oh, guys, like I might have messed up here because like I dated the same girl all the way through A&M, like all the way through A&M. And then we broke up right like in between because I graduated in December of 10. I worked for QEP or interned for QEP like full time in OKC when they still had that office until I started grad school in like August of 11. Right. And during that time, we ended up breaking up. And then I was like, well, I'm going to Colorado, whatever, new school, all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. And then get up there and just like, wow, this is not what I was expecting because I didn't even I like accepted grad school and everything, hadn't even been on the campus, right? I just did it just off whatever reputation, I guess. And I had a good project to start on.
I think we're gonna leave. I think we're gonna leave most of this conversation in the show.
Yeah.
But for those of you first turning in, this is the Oil and Gas Artist Podcast. I'm actually doing it solo today. Colin got double booked, but if you're curious who I'm sitting here chatting with, we got Brian McDowell from Sabata. Is it Sabata by itself? Sabata Technology Consultants. Sabata Energy Consultants. Where'd that name come from?
So my first LLC that I started doing some little real estate stuff down here in Houston is called LVC Land Co. And the reason for that, I really like spaghetti westerns. And
I thought you were gonna say just spaghetti at first. I didn't know
oh no,
I love spaghetti, and I'm like, oh, where's this going?
No, so the anyways, if you look through those spaghetti westerns, there's one guy that consistently see as like the bad dude in like a lot of the movies. A guy named Lee Van Cleef, right? So if you've ever watched The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly,
is he kind of like a Bruce Dern?
I don't know.
Oh man,
I have to see the face. I'm terrible at names.
You'd recognize him. Okay. He was in Cowboys.
I don't know if
with John Wayne. Will the Kids,
dude, yeah,
he's the bad guy in that one.
Okay,
he was the bad. He was like in almost every western. He was the bad guy.
See, I never watched a whole lot of the John Ford movies. Like I like John. It was pretty interesting. All those westerns that John Wayne was in. John Ford. Like I like him. I liked Comancheros. Like I watched Comancheros like a million times. But yeah, I had to go back and look afterwards. But anyways, so he was the bad guy most of the spaghetti westerns. If you watch The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, he's the bad. Right at the very end, it's got the real kind of what do they say, like a hawkish nose and really squinty eyes and stuff like that. Anyway, so the first company's called LVC for Lee Van Cleef, right? It's like on his headstone, it literally says the best of the bad, which is I always thought was cool. And so after that, all my LLCs I've been naming after characters that he was in movies. So when I started, I was using that LVC code for some consulting stuff, and it was kind of blowing up a little bit, so I needed to kind of separate it out. I'm half Mexican, so I wanted something that kind of sounded Spanish. And Sabata was like this really crappy trilogy that he did at the very dying days of spaghetti westerns in like the early 70s. And like, well, sounds kind of cool. So, I mean, I still think it sounds cool. Don't recommend doing that afterwards because it's very hard to get a domain name. So if you look at our stuff, it's sabata.us because you cannot buy any version of .com or anything like that with that name.
Which is funny because we were Googling Sabata and we could not find you guys anywhere. So we got to work on that. But then Stephanie was like, "Oh, it's Sabata.us," like from the back, and so then we found a website.
Yep, exactly.
No, that's super interesting. So, Rika, I know what you guys do, but how do you guys kind of pitch yourself?
Yeah, so we were actually talking about this the other day. We call ourselves an ultra lean startup, which honestly might be a bit of a overstatement. I started the whole thing a year ago. There's 5 partners in there. There's really only 2 of us that are full time. The rest of everybody else is mostly silent, helps us out little things here and there. But what we're trying to do is really, I guess, become kind of the anti-hero of oil and gas data, right? As the last 5 years, you've looked I'd say probably a third of all shale companies are gone, either by acquisitions, mergers, bankruptcies, whatever. And as that's happened, a lot of the data products that are out there are still priced at where things were 4 or 5 years ago when you had, when the list of public companies on RBC Richardson Bar was this long, right? Now it's like this long, right? And so those prices, right? I mean, like it's gotten so much smaller over the years.
You don't have to scroll anymore.
Yeah, no, exactly. You can see it all on one screen. I mean, I can damn near see it on my iPhone, But anyways, and so what we were seeing, I was a technical advisor at a small private shop in or in the Midland Basin, based out of Denver. And what we were seeing is like we'd have all these people that would come up and try to pitch us these like real big machine learning models or AI models or whatever like that. But like they're like, dude, we're like a small shop. We do not need, like a $50,000 product. Like we just need really simple stuff. And so during COVID, when I started my own thing, is like it was like, all right, what we were seeing is that a lot of people were going away from shale, and every layoff created about 3 other companies,
Mhm.
and a lot of them were going back to verticals.
Yeah.
And if you're getting in that space, there's a ton of data up there. Most of it's dark, it's on paper, or if it's there, if there's a digital copy, it's stuffed in a drive somewhere.
Mhm.
Um,
You know what I love about vertical wells?
what's that?
Tried and true.
Oh yeah, save the strippers, man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's I mean, think about it. Like, I mean, we it's very easy to think that shale's been around forever, man. It's only been around like, I mean, the
10
shale
years,
itself has been around for billions of years, but I'm saying like as an industry,
10,
it's
15
only been
years.
around, 10, 15 years
Yeah,
max. I mean,
yeah,
you got to think that the industry was thriving. Obviously, we have downturns, but on vertical wells,
yeah, 100%.
and now that that's like the contrarian play, it's like
I
for
well,
so long it was unsexy. Now it's sexy again,
I
in my
totally
opinion.
agree. And that's what we're seeing right now in Midland, or at least what I'm seeing, is you're seeing like a re-diversification of the oil field, right? I mean, shale has been the religion for 10 years, right? And it's like it's kind of like Game of Thrones, right? The old gods versus the new gods. Well, I feel like people are going back to the old gods again, right? Going
Mhm.
after, you're seeing respecialization in tie gas sands, water floods, CO2 floods, the old sprayberry trend stuff and all this. The problem is there's
I'm
not
super bullish on EOR.
what's that?
I'm super bullish on EOR,
In general or in
and just in
shales,
general,
or yeah.
just in general.
Oh, I agree, especially with all the sequestration talk going
Yeah.
on. But what we were seeing is that there's not really there. You have essentially that kind of small shop mom and pop company part of the industry is actually growing,
Yeah.
but there's no one really trying to fill that niche. And
Mhm.
so our thing is essentially we're trying to get in there and it's like, hey, we are not AWS or whoever is going to build you this big, huge, fancy whatever. We're here to do kind of the blue collar engineering or the blue collar geology that most small shops need. And frankly, there's not a whole lot of people that do it. It's hard to kind of scale. It's hard to build, $1 billion company off of something like that. And for us, what we ended up starting was buying this library, oil and gas library out in Midland, and essentially use that as a seed crystal to kind of build that data to where we can do consulting and the data side, right? If you want straight data, we'll sell you that. If you want data services, we can do that. We manage over 1 million well logs right now with
Mhm.
literally 2 people and a ton of stuff on the cloud, ton of cloud processing. Or if you want to do the consulting, we can come in and we'll actually bring this huge data set with us too. And
Mhm.
what I see is a lot of times the data companies, it's pure data. They'll put out some tops and some consulting stuff, but no one ever believes it, right? You got pure consultants, a lot of technical expertise, but they don't own their data. They rely on the client. What we're trying to do is
Mhm.
a little bit of both and really drop kind of down below the radar and kind of find that sweet spot. We're working with this kind of 5 to maybe 100 person companies, and just like, hey, it's like, I don't know if you've ever seen From Hell or High Water, they go in and they order those steaks and the old crusty waitress is like, what don't you want?
Yeah.
That's kind of what we was like, hey, what don't you want? You want us to build spot fire dashboards? Done. You want just a data directory of all the well logs that are in the Permian Basin? Done. You want us to go straight in rasters and pick? All right, we can do that too. You
Mhm.
want to do like really hardcore frac hit analysis? We can do that. I mean, we got a partner with Frac Pro on this stuff. We're talking with CMG about partnering up
Yeah.
on reservoir simulation
Yeah.
for small companies. I mean, I think there's a huge part of the industry is just like totally underserved, and that part is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Dude, I could not agree more. You've absolutely nailed it. From like you said, all these layoffs spurs, a lot of these more mom and pop shops that are kind of popping up. We're seeing tons of those. I can't tell you how many guys that either have gotten laid off, took some kind of severance packages that was seed money, paired up with some other guys, went and bought some old conventional assets, or I'm seeing pumpers who are just going out there and actually acquiring wells for themselves, reworking these. Like there's so much opportunity. And I think that, what does my data look like outside of, sitting here and podcasting is, talking to a lot of companies kind of behind the scenes about what they're working on and, how they're getting onto the market. And it's so easy for these companies to get focused on, I'm going to sell to Chevron and Exxon and all the super majors and all the large caps. And it's like, you realize that your total addressable market is extremely small. Your sales cycles are extremely long. They're going to squeeze you for every nickel and they're going to demand the absolute best service whenever, like you said, there's this entire underserved market. I mean, the bulk of E&Ps in the United States are these mom and pop stripper well operations.
100%. I mean, so actually, I was on a pivoting panel for APG on Wednesday, and I looked up. I was looking on the stripper. There's a stripper well association, right?
Yeah.
And I was looking up the stats they've got on their webpage. So they said, and I think I'm going to get these numbers right, is that stripper wells account for something like 8% of all oil and gas production in the U.S. Right? Pretty good chunk, but not an enormous chunk, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they account for 76% of the total well count, right?
Yeah.
That's a big deal. And as people are trying to one pivot into this stuff, but number two, everyone's talking about like carbon sequestration and geothermal and
Mm-hmm.
hydrogen storage and all this stuff. Those old verticals, you are not going out. I mean, with exception, you talk about EOR, there is some EOR projects, successful projects in shale, but for the most part, you're not pumping, megatons or whatever the unit is of CO2 into nanodarcy rock. You're going to go put it in and the most permeable stuff that you can find with really good seals. Well, what is that? That's these old fields that are 100 years old,
Mm-hmm.
right? That people have literally forgotten about. I mean, you can't even find the well spots on the Railroad Commission website. And I cannot tell you, we bought this library, right? Some of our stuff, the earliest stuff that we've got goes back to the 20s. A lot of it picks up in the 40s. And I was showing someone around actually last week during
Mm-hmm.
during y'all's tech night or right before the tech night, and we pulled a random completion card, right, which just has all DST data, perforations, blah blah. And they're like, why do we care about this crap? And I was like, well, look at this, and I'm not even joking. Pulled something out at random, and I was like, look, this card has 5 DSTs on it, right? Two or three of which had oil shows. And like, all right, well, that's cool. And I was like, yeah, you see the date there? Like, yeah, 1950. He's like, all right, you see what's underneath it? Like, and it's like plugged and abandoned. Dude, it's like, this is you talk about a direct hydrocarbon indicator. Dude, if you're going out there and drilling these wells with like just a single, rig,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these are cheap wells. And some of the stuff is like 3,000 foot deep. Like maybe someone came back in afterwards, but that's what you care about, man. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of opportunity out there.
Think about macro. Okay. We're not discovering any new plays, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely slowed down. I mean, there's always more out there, but yeah,
Yeah.
in general, I'd agree with
Nothing.
you.
Nobody's going out there discovering a new Permian Basin, a new Bakken, a new Marcellus.
Well, and I think too is like we've all got 10 years, 15 years of drilling inventory. No one wants to go spend another $1 billion to go find a new field. I mean,
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
do, but you don't, right?
You
I mean,
don't.
you're gonna have to invest for
Not after
quiet
what we've just been through.
streets.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
we're still clawing our way out of 2020.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so
100%.
you got to think about where's the lowest hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Like you said, wells that have already been drilled, wells that have been plugged and abandoned. There's a lot of shows. Why don't we go back into some of these?
Yeah. You know what's interesting to me, and I'm totally part of that too. So I'm 32, about to turn 33. I've been working the oil business, exploration side, interning and all that good stuff since 2011, right? So actually, yeah, right at 10, just a little over 11, 10 years,
Mhm.
right? I used to tell people that I have never worked above a microdarcy of permeability, right? Because the highest perm I've ever worked was tight gas sands for my PhD, right? And that is totally common. There's a lot of people out there, my age, younger, a few years older than me, that all they've done is shale. Well, if most of the activity in shale is gone, you got kind of two choices. You either got to retool for the new stuff
Mhm.
or the new thing, right? Or or you leave the industry, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's what we're seeing. And I think a lot, we bought this, like I said, I keep going back to buying this library. I had spent like a whopping maybe 2 or 3 days in a library, in a traditional oil and gas like library, my entire career over 10 years, right? Before this. And now what I'm seeing is there's a lot of us. I was just having coffee with a guy this morning. Same thing. It's like we've never worked this stuff. There's a lot of opportunity. A lot of the old guys and gals are retiring and they're gone and they're not coming back. And like now we're going back to what the oil industry was for the first 130 years, and most of us have never even worked it. I mean, so a lot of the mentors are gone
Mhm.
or retired, and like you got all this opportunity. It's just a scramble trying to essentially relearn what I think a lot of us have either lost or never learned to begin with over the last 10 or 15 years. I mean, we're going to these libraries and we do a lot of cloud stuff. It's pretty straightforward, but some of these libraries, I mean, you have a lot of people that have worked on those things for 30 years. I mean, they barely work an Excel sheet, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, they have
Mm-hmm.
their knowledge of oil and gas data is so deep, right? You can only specialize in one or two things. And we're going in there, it's like, hey, we can do this. We can do all this really fancy image processing and build all these machines and blah, blah. But at the end of the day, like, we still need someone to kind of teach us what we're looking at,
Yeah.
right? And that's just really where we're doing these pilot projects where trying to lean off each other. Like, hey, y'all got this big thing. You know your data. You've literally run this thing for 60, 70 years, whatever, 50 years. They want to monetize it, don't know how to do it. We want to monetize it too. We can learn how to scale everything digitally, but someone still has to learn, like, what are we looking at a lot of the times.
So expand upon that a little bit. So you're saying that companies are coming to you guys with additional data. So you guys have your library that you just bought. You said it was like tons and tons of data going back to like the 40s or something, right? But you're also having operators that have, say, maybe their own logs that are wanting to maybe contribute to this, and you guys are collectively going to monetize and kind of learn from that, or
yes,
am I getting it right or no?
Yes. So it's a little bit of everything, right? So the way that you look at it now, there's most oil and gas data is split up into kind of 5 places. You got the regulatory agencies, you've got the service companies.
Just really good at data.
Yeah,
quality.
They're amazing. The Railroad Commission just,
God,
the only one worse than it's like Oklahoma is like,
it's worse.
Yeah,
it's worse than ours.
The BEG's cuttings and core list is it's impressively bad. Like, I don't think I could actually make it worse if I did it purposely. Like, just pulling those data lists.
I don't know if you knew, we had wells in Oklahoma that we operated, and I found myself at the OCC in person way more times than I wanted to.
Yeah.
And they're like, "You guys don't own these wells," and I'm like, "Yes, we do."
Yeah.
They're like, "No, you don't." And I'm like, "Yes, we do. I promise you." They're like, "Well, we have no file of it," and I'm like, "Well, that's your problem, not mine."
I got a buddy in I'm going to digress for 1 second. I had a buddy in San Angelo that bought some property out, and I think it was in Crockett County. It might have been Glasscock. And he's going out there, and he's calling me. He's like, "Man," he's like, "there's like 15 extra wells out here that aren't on the Railroad Commission website." I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, apparently some old guy came out here in the 70s and just started punching holes. And if he didn't find oil, he just told him he drilled a water well." and he found oil. He's like,
"Man, that's an oil man if I ever heard one."
He's like, "If I found oil," there's like, "Oh," and then he sent in a permit, after it was already drilled and proven, and they'd send the permit back, and then they'd turn it on. He's like, "Dude," he's like, "we're finding like these holes all over the place that are supposedly water wells." I mean, anyway, it's crazy, that sort of thing. But anyway, so you have most of this data, and it's regulatory agencies, it's in service companies, IHS, TGS, whatever, operators. Okay, you've got universities, oil and gas libraries, and then what's my last one? Oh, private collections, dude.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how many people just have like a garage full of logs, right? So the problem is anybody can go scrape data now, right? I mean, the barrier to entry on Python and all that stuff is much, much lower now. I think we all at least started a Python course during COVID, and most of us didn't finish, right? Yeah. So, if it's available online, like, we can go download it, we scrape it, right? We've done for about 1 million well logs so far. Then there's the paper data. A lot of times you can buy it. So we bought one of the log libraries, Midland, about 500,000 well logs, about 1 million completion cards, which is only the 3rd largest library in Midland. Okay. So that takes kind of there's another one there. Universities, that depends. Some universities do a good job of it, some of them don't. Service companies, they're only going to share it, obviously, if you pay them. And then operators usually on data trades. Okay. So what we've been trying to do is essentially, I worked part-time for Cimarex in New Ventures when I was in grad school. And, a lot of times we see these deals come across from the BD guys and say, "Hey, there's this big acreage block out where, whatever, where Jesus lost his slippers. You got 10 days or 2 weeks to come up with a deal, what it's worth and how much you want to put money in." And like scrambling, like, if it's someone like, I don't know, like Nevada or something, like, who even regulates that stuff? So you spend a week just trying to track down what's available.
Some of this place where there's like Indian lands, like Utah, you're dealing with a reservation. Oh, God.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, we're looking at Maryland stuff the other day. I was asking.
Maryland?
Yeah, we do helium stuff. So
okay,
you follow helium, you ended up in really wild areas.
There's no oil wells in Maryland, are there?
There's definitely some wells that have been drilled. I
Really?
don't think there's any productive wells, but no, there's definitely wells that have
Okay.
been drilled, 100%.
Interesting.
With shows and stuff. I mean, it's all faulted up and everything. It's the
Yeah.
east side of the Appalachians,
Yeah.
but anyways. So, anyways, I got really tired. We go and scramble and trying to find everything that's available, and the problem is you're going through like 15 different websites. Okay, and
And usually none of them are very good.
oh no, I mean most of
There's
them.
like major gaping holes in data
Yeah,
sets,
they usually
right?
range from bad to like just, oh my gosh, is this even
Yeah.
like I can't even open this Excel file. It's so
Yeah.
old, kind of thing, right? And so when all the COVID stuff started, my PhD is actually all Western Colorado stuff. And we couldn't make any sense of the stratigraphy. So over the course of like 5, 6 years, I went and found all the publications, all the cross sections that were published, and compiled it all into just a big table. Well, when I was trying to help some buddies out here in the Permian trying to find data, I was like, dude, like this stuff's all over the place, blah, blah. So we started piecing it together and kind of making it all talk. And what we realized is that if you really think about it, there is no like yellow pages to go find what data is available. You have to go to like 15, 20, 50 different websites to go find it. And so what we've been doing is gathering anything and everything we could and just getting it all talking into one platform. So if we can buy the data, we buy it. And that paper data, we've got a really cool way of slapping QR codes on it. And we got an iPhone app that actually
Mhm.
helps us index it. If we can scrape it and actually go download it, we do that. If all we can get is the data list, we grab that too. And then if we find something that's high value that it's just totally dark, there's no catalog of it, there's no digital copies of it whatsoever. We just start approaching them and say, hey, would y'all be interested? And we actually come in here, we'll index your data totally for free, 100% for free, if you let us essentially sell the listing as a product that's really geared towards kind of independent operators and better.
You take a cut, they're able to monetize data that was sitting in the
Yeah, so it's kind of two tier, right? So the first part of this is kind of the yellow pages thing, which we're going live hopefully next month. Probably charge like $50 a month, right? I
and
mean,
yellow page. And if I understand you correctly, it's like you're able to like, cause like you said, you're going to 15 different websites to find what you're looking for. You guys have done that work, and now you're able to say, if you're looking, you query something, it's almost like your Google, you query something for certain piece of data in the San Juan Basin.
yep,
You guys have gone out and said, here's exactly where you can find that data.
that's exactly right. So we can go out, you
That's
can go.
useful as shit.
It's insanely useful, and
Yeah.
I don't know why it hasn't been done before. I'm not sure. It's like I don't know. We're either really smart or really dumb for trying this. I mean, to be honest, because like if you want to go out and say I want to find anything and everything that's available in Lee County, New Mexico, right? You got to go to the Railroad Commission, the BEG, the USGS, the OCD New Mexico Tech, the Midland Energy Library, our library, the Subsurface Library, right? Well, I guess university lands, you can get stuff just across the board. I mean, all this stuff, right? And they all report it differently at varying degrees. And so with ours, you can go and say, I want everything that's available in Lee County, New Mexico, and you will see everything from everybody. If it's public, we've scraped it. You could either go get it your own, or if you want to buy it from us, we'll sell it to you for like $1 a log
Mm-hmm.
or something like that. Like, not $50 a log for stuff that's public, right?
Yeah.
The idea is that this is really kind of the milk in the grocery store, is that it's so convenient and so cheap that we just want the traffic for people coming in to get in there, right? But then the real thing that we're trying to scale up, and we've got these pilot projects with the Midland Energy Library, and another we're about to start with the Denver Library, or the Denver Energy Resources Library, which is the big one for the Rockies, is that we'll go in the index this data, we'll cross list on our site, we'll sell the data directory for real cheap. It's essentially free advertising for everybody. And then if you want to monetize this, hell, how about you just let us broker the data through our site? Because we have all the well spots in the US and Canada.
Mm-hmm.
We've got this really nice system of organizing all this stuff. It's all totally talking 100% standardized up as much as you can get it, right? Just do it through our system. We'll sell it and we'll just take a little brokerage fee off the top. Because at the end of the day, I don't think we're really going to get, we're going to get rich on this stuff. This is mainly to get people in the door for the consulting side, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
as consultants, if you can bring unique data to the table that no one else has, you have a very real competitive advantage, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion, right? Because otherwise, if you're depending on the client, and if your client is a startup that started 6 months ago, probably don't have a whole lot,
Yeah.
right? And you don't have the cash to go spend $100,000 subscription to get all these logs, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's really the key. And everything we try to do is a la carte, right? No, none of these big, huge subscription fees just to get the right to overpay for a well log, right? You can just call us up and say, hey, we want everything in these townships. All right, cool. How do you want the files named? What files do you want? Do you want them straightened? Do you want them death registered so you can bring them into Petra? Whatever,
Yeah.
you know? And
So the ambition is, I mean, you guys are kind of scratching your own itch here, and it's not necessarily, correct me if I'm wrong, but not necessarily to be this massive tech company, data provider, but it's more so you guys are building up more of a competitive advantage for the consulting
yeah,
side because you feel like you have a lot of secret sauce there.
yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, and at the end of the day, it's kind of in stages, right? I mean, to me, the foundation of any good company, right, is you've got to have good data. A lot of data, but a lot of data doesn't mean anything unless you can use it, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the foundation there, right? And that's kind of get people in the door and everything because everyone gets excited about new data that they that's like, oh my gosh, there's a mud log out here I never knew about, right? And then the next stage of that is really building up the consulting. A lot of stuff we've been doing so far is really kind of Spotfire dashboards, building some simple
Yeah.
databases, Python scripting, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, we've got, our partners, 5 people. We got 5 master's degrees and 2 and I guess a half PhD for me. I tell
Mhm.
everybody we got more degrees in Russian protractor in the partners, but we got everything from really hardcore reservoir engineers all the way to really hardcore geophysicists and really hardcore geologists as well.
Yeah.
So we can start once we have that data and we own it, we understand it. We can do a lot more with that stuff than most people can
Mhm.
because it's us, it's ours. It's a lot like a restaurant. It's like you only use a restaurant really, 10, 12 hours out of the day, and the rest of the time is just kind of empty space.
So I'm curious, I'm kind of thinking about you guys almost like Google for logs now as opposed to Yellow Pages because I'm thinking about,
Yep.
Google at one point in time, and I'm sure the product's still going, but they have Google Books. Well,
Yep.
they went through and they indexed
Everything.
every
Yep.
book you can possibly imagine. Now you search something, you can find a specific excerpt in a book, right? So my question would be, how far through, or if at all, do you guys go with digitizing some of these paper logs that you guys have?
Yeah.
Is it, hey, we're going to scan the whole page, or is it almost like you're actually you're scanning and marking and putting in some sort of database exactly where you're seeing shows?
Yeah. So for us right now, it's yeah, but
And it could be in phases, right? I'm just
yeah,
curious as to where it
100%.
goes,
Yeah,
right?
and it absolutely is in phases, right? I mean, because we're like I said, I mean, there's really just 2 of us that are full time
Yeah.
until we can really get this thing live next month, and then we're going after hopefully we've bootstrapped everything from our own cash, all of it,
Mhm.
right? After this, hopefully show people that we can do, and then hopefully go and get some real money to really take this to the next level. But the fundamentally at the thing is initially just going through and it's like every log that's out there, we want a photographic record of that log header. Okay.
Mhm.
So the fundamental unit of anything physical is an image, right?
Yeah.
And if you can take an image, it's like seismic. You can reprocess seismic forever, and people do reprocess it forever,
Yeah.
right? For us, if we can put a QR code on a log header and take a photograph of that, as image processing gets better and better, right now, like, hey, if you go look, we've got this log, it's in this location, but we don't have a log header description or a top depth or a bottom depth of that. But we do have a picture. And so you can go through and you can click on the hyperlink in that thing, it'll hit AWS and you see a log header, right? That's the first step, just to get
Mhm.
that part. And then we're the
You gotta go
next
0 to 1. I mean, that's a huge step,
yeah, exactly.
right?
I mean, because even that, as simple as that is, it's not really out there. And we've got some really cool scripts where, like, all of our well logs are TIFFs. We've automatically go through, we open up that TIFF file, big, huge TIFF file, and automatically clip the log header off and put it out there. So everything we've got, even if it's free, you can just kind of click through everything instead of having to download, a million 5 megabyte files. But what's really cool about that, we're partnering up with a buddy of mine, David Thule, who worked, him and his wife started a little company called Geolumina out in Austin.
Okay.
And they really focus just on image processing for oil and
Mm.
gas, right? So our side is mostly data ingestion, the data munging side of it, the storage, the visualization, right? He's on the processing side. And so we're working together to where this iPhone app that I was talking about, we'll take a whole box of logs, put a sticker on it, take a photograph of just an iPhone. It's this really fancy, like $100 setup from Amazon. I mean, it's very, it's very scientific. And then it sends it out to the cloud. Their company, they grab the image, clip it, clean it up, pull the QR code off there, rename it, and shove it back to our servers. And that's it, right? And then the next step on this, which is what we're going through right now, the next step on this, what we're starting on, is that once you have that image, you can start sorting all these different log headers by vintage, the wireline company, what log was there, and start separating it in all these buckets by these self-organizing maps. And then you can start custom build scripts to start pulling the header information off of every single one of those templates, right?
Mhm.
That's the next step, and then at the end of the day, and I'm hoping we can have this by the end of the year, where you can go in, or anybody, high school kid can go in, put a sticker on a log, take a photograph, and the next morning you'll have all the information off of there pulled on the website in the database, and you don't have to touch anything. That's really the goal. And it's
So it's not this, if I understand you correctly, it's not you guys at Sabata necessarily having this app. It's almost like gig economy of anybody can go in and take an image
Yeah,
of a log.
that's the idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
So right now it's we're doing it internally. We've got, like I said, we got this pilot project with the Middle Energy Library. And actually I was talking to the operator today. Is the good thing is we build all the stuff internally. When we bought our own library, we're not going out there and trying to pitch this to other libraries. Like, dudes, like, we're doing this on 1,000,000 documents, right?
Yeah.
It's like, we're going to test it out. We're trying to offer this to y'all, and we'll do this for free if you let us broker the data
Yeah.
afterwards, right? What I'm really wanting to do, and this is what we were talking with the company this morning, is saying all these companies have these huge, a lot of times, warehouses of just logs and boxes, and they have no idea how to go through it. Saying, hey, if you want to broker your data, then let's go do that, and we'll go start tagging all the paper data. Or if you just want to have this stuff organized, and we'll do it as a service, maybe
Mhm.
$1, $2 a log, and we'll catalog your entire system for you. And you don't have to touch anything. And part of this, excuse me, where we bought this warehouse out in Midland is so we could even host the data,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, hey, you got a barn full of stuff out in wherever, La Mesa or something like that. We can go pull it, and we call it tagging and bagging. So we can tag and bag the whole thing, resort it, put it in boxes, and we'll store it in our warehouse. And then you have all the log headers, everything on a map. And then instead of scanning 10,000 logs at $10 a pop, you just call us when you want to say, hey, I want this log, and this log scan. All right, cool. We'll go pull it off the shelf,
Mhm.
scan it, send it back, right? Our big thing is you tag everything by rule. So we catalog by rule and we scan by exception. Because otherwise you'll be in there 10 years trying to scan some of the stuff, right?
Dude, okay, it's fascinating, and we have a limited amount of time, so
Oh, sorry.
I want to run through. I like this gig economy thing a lot. Is it do you or does somebody do that? Say they're at an opera. Does it do it kind of as you see fit or as you need things, or is there any kind of like? I mean, I think a lot of people are laid off right now. Are you guys saying, hey, in the same way that maybe Uber or Lyft would, hey, there's a bounty for, let's just use that San Juan Basin example of we're dark here. We
Yeah.
think there could be some data here.
Yeah.
If you're able to secure that, boom, $2,000 to whoever can secure this, or a certain price per header or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have thought about that or if that's how it works now. I'm just kind of curious because I think that's like
Yeah. That's
a
actually
cool opportunity.
Yeah, and that's what we're running through right now is because like I said, right now we've been doing it internally because we essentially the QR codes are kind of our, I guess, IP. I mean, it's pretty
Yeah.
straightforward, but we print those stickers and everything out and we just mail them. But yeah, I mean, honestly, anybody could do this stuff.
Mhm.
And the idea behind this, I mean, what we're really building is that kind of the automation part of it, and frankly, the base layer data, right? I mean, because the thing is the more of the stuff you pull in, the more enrichment that you get for the database,
Mhm.
right? I mean, so a lot of this public data, like I said, we got 1,000,000 well logs. Well, anybody can go pull those. But like how many people actually have 1,000,000 well logs in a database where you can really lever off of? Because
Yeah.
every log header and completion card and drill stem test, the well name's a little different. The operator changed, the date on this, the date on that. Maybe they put the wrong API in there. You can really put these things together and actually get a real history of that well
Mhm.
over the course of a long time. Because again, we're focusing on everything that's dark. I mean, that's really what we're going after is the image files, which are tough to mess with, the paper data that no one even knows exists half the time. I mean, I cannot tell you how much stuff we find where those wells don't even exist in the Railroad Commission.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got great stuff in there. And it's like, I don't know, maybe some of the big shops know about it, but it's there's some real gems out there, you
So
know.
two questions. First one about technology, second about opportunities. First question would be if you're able to scan all of these, maybe eventually, let's just say this is like phase 5, whether it be you guys or whether it be just, is this possible in general? I mean, are there opportunities to use, let's just call it machine learning of being able to see
Yeah.
if you're able to correlate that with, hey, here's where it IP'd at, here's where the the production was, using
100%.
offset data,
Yep.
to where now it's like, I want to understand some opportunities. Boom, this thing's able to spit out in a certain geographic location. Here's the highest probability of these are wells that maybe we should go back into, or maybe wells that we should acquire.
100%. Absolutely. I mean, that is why for us getting the images, and if you've got a physical piece of paper, an image is the fundamental unit
Mm-hmm.
of data on there, right? If you get a good image, you can process it and do whatever you want to. So these self-organizing maps that like Geolumina is doing, I mean, that's what they're doing. I mean, we're building up our public well log set, 800, 700,000 raster files that we've clipped the log headers is our training data set. So when you go in and take that picture with your iPhone, you've got a million image training set behind you that's going to
Mm-hmm.
automate that, right? That's the big thing with, and I'm not by no means an ML or an AI uh, expert, or I barely know enough to even like,
You don't need to be. You just got to hire
yeah,
that person.
yeah, and that's what those guys are for, right? But the idea is like you need more and more data. A lot of times those models don't really get out there, or they're not really useful because you don't have enough data behind it, right?
So you okay, so that would be huge. First off, you're able to find opportunities. But there's also the parts of like there's so many areas that, have never been logged. Is it possible, and is there enough data out there to at least start the process of, I'm going to go back to another Google kind of analogy. We have Google Earth. You can go and see the entire surface. Is there enough logs to where we can actually 3D model underground and start piecing together what the geology looks like in it? You got logs here, you got logs here, you got logs here.
Yeah.
Is there enough data out there, potentially even in some areas, to kind of predict approximately what the geology would look like to see other opportunities?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I mean, that's essentially all static geologic modeling. I
Yeah.
mean, you have to have constraints with tops and stuff like that. But yeah, no,
Also, I
absolutely.
know nothing about geology whatsoever. So if these are dumb questions, let me know.
No, yeah. So a
Um,
lot of that stuff, the big thing is like obviously you have to get in a digital format, right? An image is
yeah.
an image, right? You have to convert it one way or the other. I mean, the holy grail of well logs is being able to take those raster files and really totally automate it. There's some pretty
Hmm.
decent algorithms out there, but it's still not perfect. It's still
Yeah.
a very manual process. But yeah, I think the better thing, and really going, and actually we were talking about mud logging stuff earlier. A good example of this is on well log. All mud loggers are not created equal, right? Some are
Hmm.
really good. Some, they're at Waterburger, a month or two beforehand, and
Yeah.
they said screw this after 2 months and quit, right? And so a lot of times you get that mud logger name on those log headers, right? Well, once you start taking those photographs of there, you can start pulling those mud logger names. And if you really get to the point where you can automate this, you can start seeing where that mud logger did all of their stuff for the whole basin over their career, right? And
Yeah.
you can start, I mean, if you get to the point where it's like, all right, I like these mud logs, I don't like these, you can start ranking.
Hmm.
You can start ranking interpretations.
Well, on top of that, is there okay? So you're ranking interpretations. You have data, but then there's also the whole nother level of contextual data. Is
Yeah.
there an opportunity for somebody who's going in, like you guys, or maybe you expand the platform to somebody else, of logs that you guys have analyzed, and maybe you're putting in certain types of notes of things that you've been able to realize, and
Yeah.
maybe make that available to anybody else if they're willing to kind of show you their notes as well? And
Yeah, 100%. So that's actually the really cool thing about physical data, especially in these libraries. A lot of the stuff's been there for 30, 40, 50 years. There's tons of notes on these things. Now, you have to take it
Mhm.
off a grain of salt. There's a lot there. There's a lot there that you do not see in databases. Like DST stuff is really, you'll see a lot of drill stem test notes that'll be on there, and you go and look online, and there's no mention of it whatsoever.
Mhm.
Again, you have to take it with a grain of salt, but you can do a lot of different things with it. So we actually internally, now we have not scaled this, or we have not really done this robustly because it's hard to scale. But we've already got a thing now where we make a flag like, hey, is there handwritten notes in this? Yes, no.
Yeah.
A really cool one for us, our library. They used to allow people to check out the well logs, and every time they did, they'd put a big red stamp on it with the date. Well, so our big thing is like, well, if you've got 500,000 well logs, how do you choose where to start? Right?
Mhm.
Obviously, follow the rigs, but okay, that's one way to do it. But then the rigs move all over the place over 40 years because the plays change, right? Well, for us, one real way to do it is like if we're taking a picture of the log headers, and every time a log's been checked out, it's got a red stamp. One really easy way to check for importance is how many red pixels are in that photograph, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if it's been checked out 50 times, it's going to have a lot of red pixels. If it's been never been checked out, it's going to have 0. And that's a really simple way that's very specific to us where we can go through like, hey, this log has been checked out like 30 times over the course of 20 years. Like,
That's
this is
interesting.
obviously a key
Yeah.
well, right? And there's those little things like that every library and every collection is different because a lot of the stuff came from operators. Every operator does stuff different. You have these little subtleties that you can really kind of nitpick and stuff
Mm-hmm.
once you get that little image associated with it. It's pretty. I mean, it's like obviously I'm a data nerd. It's really cool because then you go way down the rabbit
Yeah.
holes on some of this stuff. You know,
I think what's exciting about this is just going back to the basics of where we started the conversation. It's you're taking the industry essentially from 0 to 1, right? When it comes to finding these types of things and being able to simply index that, but then there's so much that once you have this structured data, there's so much upside to that.
I think we've actually have these discussions internally a lot, and even with these libraries we've been talking to, there isn't really any sort of data transparency out there.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the data that's available is either in big service companies where you really can't see anything unless you pay big money to
Mm-hmm.
actually just to look behind the curtain, not even look at the data, just look behind the curtain what's there. Um, but then there's an enormous amount that's just on paper or locked away in files and stuff. So, the big one, like for an operator, is data trades,
Yeah.
right? I want to go drill out here. Well, who's got data out there? Well, Pioneer's got some wells, so we'll go call up my drinking buddy at Pioneer. We'll see if they got anything. I was like, well, we only bought those wells a couple years ago from whoever, right? Joe Blow. Well, he died like 10 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and he got those from someone else, and that's the guy that actually drilled them. And I heard that he's got them in his garage, but I don't really know, right? And it's like, okay, like you don't even know where to start, and that's what we're with these conversations we're having in is like there really is no transparency. And if we can actually do what we think we can and what we're moving towards, just between our library, like Midland and Denver, we've got close to 6-7 million well log. And that doesn't even count the completion cards. I was talking to a library in DFW yesterday that has 7 million completion cards.
Jeez.
I don't think people realize our million completion cards took up about 700 boxes, right? So we're looking at about 15,000 pounds of
Mm-hmm.
paper, right? It's the size of the prize out there is unreal. I don't really think people really realize how much is out there. And that's what we're trying to change.
Man, I've never been so excited about geological data in my life.
Yeah. It's like, it's pretty.
You're making me want to get back into it. I already lost a lot of money once, but I'm willing to gamble and
Hey
go
man,
again.
the barriers for entry, there was no way we would ever be able to do what we're doing with essentially 5 people or less without cloud computing has gotten so much easier and so much more
Mm-hmm.
affordable, right? And like even just Python, like everything we do, we use mostly open source stuff.
Yeah.
We've got 8 virtual machines right now on Azure processing data 24/7. We are migrating 1 million well logs right now, and it cost me a whopping $1.52 an hour to do it.
Jeez.
I mean,
That's nuts.
it's insane.
Yeah.
It's absolutely insane. Like, and I feel like when I was in the operators, we were doing some pretty hardcore reservoir simulation.
Mm-hmm.
We got like 8 CPUs and like 64 gigs of RAM. It's like, oh, dude, this is like whatever IBM in the 50s, man. Like we're freaking rocking, And then I get out and start looking as like at AWS when I don't have an IT team anymore. And I'm sitting there as like, man, like I can build the same machine in about 30 minutes on AWS, and it costs me like $1.25 an hour to
And
run.
it's crazy with the advances in technology these days, and especially that exponential technology development curve. It's absolutely wild. So
Like
we're able, as an industry, we're able to do things in the last few years that we've never been able to do before.
100%. I think the biggest thing is, and I was just like this 18 months ago. I had no idea what was even possible out there.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, I still don't know, but we're just barely starting to kind of look through the keyhole and realize like there's, I mean, it, the, we're going to process 1 million images this year.
Yeah.
If we keep on this trajectory, I'm expecting we'll probably go through 10 to 20 million next year with a company of less than 10 people.
That's nuts,
Right.
dude.
It's I think it's wild. I
That's
mean,
absolutely wild,
yeah,
dude.
it's been an interesting 18 months, to say the least, and it's getting more interesting by the day.
Well, man, this is
So,
I could have this conversation for another 3 hours. So we're gonna have you back here soon, just
yeah,
to kind of
absolutely.
continue chatting. And we talked about your website earlier, so it is just
Yeah,
sabata.us.
Sabata.us. So S Sierra A B is in Bravo
Yeah,
ATA.us.
and you're on LinkedIn, so everybody
Oh
can reach
yeah,
out to there. So
very
Brian
active on
McDowell on
LinkedIn.
there. We'll put all his information in the show notes as well. So if you guys want to reach out, I have a feeling we're gonna be seeing a lot more of you soon.
I hope so.
Hey,
Trying like
man,
hell.
it's a great chat.
Yeah, appreciate it.
All right, guys. If you like the episode, take 2 seconds, leave us a rating and review. We will catch it. We have a huge, crazy 2022 event schedule. Everybody's been asking about that. So we'll be releasing that soon. Got a couple more podcasts, new shows kind of in the works as well. So be on the lookout for that. Subscribe to the BDE newsletter if you haven't checked that out. We'll catch you guys in the next episode.